Good morning, everyone. I'll put it back. It's adjusted for you. Okay. I want to welcome you to the conference. Invite you to sit down for those of you who are still finding a seat. So, my name is Ellen MacEachen. I'm here with Stephanie Premji. We're co-leads of this project that has a very distinct history that we will talk with you about. We want to welcome you to the Conference on Workers' Health and Return to Work in a Changing World of Work. I'll begin with a land acknowledgement. We pay respect to the Algonquin people who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region, from nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. And we acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future. It can be a little bit rote sometimes reading these acknowledgements, and so a personal statement is always helpful too. And one thing that I've been doing personally is reading novels by Indigenous authors. Every second book is a novel by an Indigenous author. And for me, getting into the drama and the family stories and intergenerational stories really makes a difference. Everyone learns in different ways, but I've just really, really grown so much by reading this literature. So before moving on to the affairs of the day, there's a really important context to this conference. And many of you know about the student encampments protesting against the actions in Gaza that are happening all over Canada, Europe, United States, and also here at University of Ottawa. And a strategy by students at University of Ottawa has been to disrupt conferences because the idea is to draw attention to what's going on. And so we thought, well, what do we do? Do we cancel the conference? Do we try to move it somewhere? We started having emergency meetings of the planning committee. And then our injured worker activists who've been thinking about protesting and actions for years and years and years said, why don't we talk to them? and so we took that risky move and we talked to them, and it's been so wonderful. And so we arranged a way of working together. So last night we went and we had an education session and a tour of the camp. This morning, right after I finish talking now, there's a speaker who's going to come up, Ayman, who's going to tell you about INSAF and what they're doing. One of our sessions is going to be held in the park where they're camped very nearby. And we have other arrangements too in support, including the opportunity for people here to sign a petition if they wish, and to donate if they wish. So Ayman, I'll welcome you to the stage now. This is someone who's hard of hearing, if you're able to hold it at the same time or just come here.
Okay, no problem. Perfect, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me today. My name is Ayman, and I'm a member of INSAF Ottawa. To give some background, INSAF is a student-led advocacy club at the University of Ottawa, with the objective of combating injustices against Palestinians inflicted by the Zionist settler colonial state. Through education, discussions, and understanding, INSAF aims to advocate for the complete liberation of Palestine from the river to the sea. INSAF has been active over the last few years on campus by hosting educational events such as teach-ins and documentary screenings, and more recently, our divestment campaign that we launched in November of 2023. This campaign that was calling for the divestment from arms and technology corporations involved in the genocide in Gaza and the continued occupation of Palestine was largely met with silence from the University of Ottawa administration. In the months since, Israel has been given the green light by governments and institutions worldwide to commit the most heinous war crimes against Palestinians in Gaza, constituting a very clear genocide. I would like to give you some context on what is happening in Gaza for anybody who might be unaware. June marks 8 months of the ongoing genocide in Gaza, 248 days of incessant bombing, forced displacement, and all inconceivable forms of barbarism perpetuated by the settler colonial state of Israel against a population of 2.2 million besieged and starving Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Every single day of the last 8 months has been saturated with the news of massacre after massacre, complete neighborhoods bombed beyond recognition, and entire families wiped off the civil registry. There are no words to fully encapsulate the extent of the horrific crimes committed by the Zionist occupation in Gaza. Just a couple of days ago, on Saturday afternoon, the occupation committed another massacre in the Nusayrat refugee camp, disguised as humanitarian aid trucks. They entered the camp and proceeded to brutally kill over 210 Palestinians under the guise of a hostage rescue. 4 hostages for over 200 Palestinian lives, after they have previously rejected multiple hostage exchange deals because it would require a permanent ceasefire on their end, something they never intended on doing, because their ultimate goal is the complete ethnic cleansing of all Palestinians in Gaza. This is the reality of Israel. The reported death toll now exceeds 45,000 Palestinians. But actual numbers, when taking into account those buried in mass, unidentifiable graves, or who remain stuck under the rubble, far exceed this. Over 83,000 Palestinians have been injured. Over 10,000 cancer patients are at immediate risk of death due to lack of available treatment. 60,000 pregnant women have no access to hospitals or medical care. 17,000 children have lost hospitals or have lost one parent or both. Over 30 children have died of starvation, with another 3,500 under the risk of death. And now over 1 million Gazans are suffering from infectious diseases. That is half the population of Gaza. Israeli occupation forces have repeatedly bombed, besieged, and completely destroyed the vast majority of the hospitals in the Gaza Strip, brutally massacring thousands of sick and injured Palestinians seeking refuge from the bombing. They have destroyed every single hospital and murdered thousands of students, professors, and faculty members, often by directly targeting their homes. They have cut off all entry of food and medical aid, leaving a population of over 2 million starving and with no access to the necessary aid that they need to survive. If the relentless bombing, repeated forced displacement, mass graves, and intentional starvation wasn't enough, occupation forces have also kidnapped thousands of Palestinian men, women, and children, detaining them at locations such as the Sde Timan concentration camp in the Naqab desert, where they face brutal torture regularly. This violence and inhumanity extends to the West Bank as well, where occupation forces have kidnapped over 5,000 Palestinians since October, adding to the 5,000 that were detained from before October, and holding them in occupation prisons where they live in the most inhumane of conditions. There are reports of regular torture, starvation, and multiple cases of murder at the hands of the IOF, Israeli occupation forces, across prisons in the West Bank. It is important to note that thousands of these detainees are children, women, elderly, sick, and injured Palestinians that receive no medical care. Given this context, it is very clear that the Zionist entity is committing multiple violations of international law, war crimes, and a blatant genocide. And they are backed and funded by our governments and institutions, such as the University of Ottawa. As such, and with the growing momentum for encampments across the US and Canada, INSAF began the Occupy Tabaré student movement and our encampment on the Tabaré lawn on April 29th, over a month ago. Our demands to the university were very clear. 1, full disclosure of all direct and indirect investments made by the university. 2, complete divestment from any and all corporations involved directly and indirectly in the surveillance, occupation, and murder of Palestinians, both in Gaza and the West Bank. 3, commitment to revise and accordingly break off relationships with academic Zionist institutions such as the Tel Aviv Exchange Program. 4, the formal adoption of the Arab-Canadian Lawyers Association definition of anti-Palestinian racism. Since April, we have been in several meetings with the university administration, namely the Chief Investment Officer, François Dion, the Provost and Head of Academic Affairs, Jacques Beauvais, and the Secretary General, Annick Bergeron. While these meetings initially seemed productive, after 2 proposals from the university and 1 counter-proposal from INSAF, it has become clear that the university values their investments more than they do human life, and that they do not want to willingly divest from genocide on moral grounds. This is why we are calling on our community, beyond just the students, to come out and support us in order to put pressure on our university to divest. We have an email campaign started calling started calling on the university to meet the students' demands immediately, and we urge anybody here who is a member of the University of Ottawa community to sign this petition addressed to the President, as well as the Chief Investment Officer, the Secretary General, and the Head of Academic Affairs, VP Student Affairs, and VP EDI. We recognize as students that we can only achieve our goals with the help and support of the larger community, and we're confident that the increased pressure from the U Ottawa community members, beyond just the students, will put significantly more pressure on the university to divest. By physically occupying Tabaret Lawn, we are sending a clear message to the university that we do not condone their complicity in this genocide, and we will not let up until they meet our demands for divestment. If you'd like to support the student encampment, we are accepting donations via e-transfer to insafiottawa@gmail.com. Those donations go towards supplies and food for the encampment, as well as any legal aid for students. Thank you all for listening. We look forward to seeing you at the encampment this week. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you very much, Eamon, for sharing this message with us, and I think it'll be an important context for our conference. So this, I need to click now. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Oh, just seeing the picture. This conference is inspired by our dear friend and colleague, I'll be okay in a minute, Professor Catherine Appel, who passed away in the fall of 2021. When she passed away, we had to consider how to best honor her vision and her work. At the time, she was leading a national study that we were part of. It was a pan-Canadian study focused on precarious employment and return to work. And we thought, well, what do we do now? She's gone. Do we continue going? Do we finish it up? And we knew that it was important to her that this work be done. This is how Catherine explained the problem that prompted our research and the topic of this conference today. She said, a fundamental purpose of workers' compensation law and policy is to help people return to work after injury, to which end it creates regulatory economic drivers as incentives. However, our pilot studies, focusing on some of the most vulnerable categories of workers, suggest that such drivers often become the new purpose of the process, preempting the original purpose of the law. So we've gathered together, she wrote to the funders, we've gathered together a multidisciplinary team of academics, partners, and trainees to address the overarching policy question. How can we get back to the purpose of the legislation and promote sustainable return to work for all workers injured or ill because of work? So now in 2024, we're almost finished this initiative that Catherine started. And so this conference marks the culmination of the initiative and a celebration of other people doing work in this area as well. It draws together researchers and activists focused on this important topics. And I think that's what's making this conference really, really special today is the combination of people who are here. It's a really special group of academics and activists. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie now, who's going to talk about the conference and the main topics.
Thank you. And bienvenue à toutes et à tous. Welcome to this event. It's really a pleasure to welcome you to this conference, which puts the spotlight on workers' health and return to work in a changing world of work. So over the next couple of days, we have a really great program planned. We have several keynote presentations that are going to put the focus on the workers' compensation system, but also on workers in heightened context of vulnerability, namely low-wage workers and migrant workers. We also have several oral presentation sessions that are going to highlight important research and advocacy work that's being done on themes that include migrant and immigrant workers, maritime workers, precarious work, geographically mobile work, gender, mental health, and workers' compensation policy. So over the next couple of days, we are also going to have several reflection and synthesis panels that are going to help us summarize and reflect upon the information that we learned from each other each day. And the panelists are going to comment from their different perspectives and expertise, which include law, policy, community advocacy, and research. So as Ellen mentioned, what's really great about this event is that it brings together not only researchers, including many students from a wide range of disciplines, but also injured and ill workers and other community members, as well as advocates. And all of whom are working in their own ways and sometimes together to address the systemic issues that continue to negatively impact workers' health and that give rise to and perpetuate inequities. So there's a lot of exciting work being done on this in Canada and internationally in both research and advocacy, and there are lots of connections to be made. So we also want to make sure that we find time to connect with each other, both during and outside of sessions. This is really a forum for the exchange of ideas, with the hope that these exchanges will lead to new and strengthened collaborations. So mobilizing our different perspectives and knowledge to better the lives of workers is what Catherine was all about. Catherine was a central part of this community, and many of you knew her, and I know miss her dearly. With this event, we also want to honor her memory and her legacy and her really, truly unparalleled contributions to occupational health and safety research, policies, and practices. So Catherine passed away peacefully at the age of 67 on September 23rd, 2021. She was very active in research and advocacy right until the end. She considered herself an activist. She was a lifelong advocate for workers' rights and was committed to giving a voice to workers who have historically lacked a voice. She brilliantly analyzed workers' compensation law and practice, and she had a very unique approach to research. So she combined classic legal analysis with empirical qualitative studies of how these laws and policies were actually implemented. So in other words, her work really bridged the gaps between policy and real-world experiences. So at the University of Ottawa here, Catherine held a distinguished research chair in occupational health and safety law. She was a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, and she was also awarded the SSHRC Gold Medal in 2017, which is the highest honor given by SSHRC to an individual whose, and I quote, leadership, dedication, and originality of thought inspire both students and colleagues. So it's safe to say that her work has had a major impact shaping protections and compensations and compensation for workers in Canada and internationally. But Catherine wasn't only an amazing researcher and advocate in health and safety, she was above all, I'm gonna cry. She was above all caring and generous with her time and knowledge. Excuse me. She was a dedicated colleague and an outstanding mentor and ally to students and young researchers. So Catherine was my PhD co-supervisor, along with Karen Messing, who I also had the immense privilege of having as mentor. Catherine gave me opportunities, supported me, and believed in my potential. Like Karen, Catherine taught me not only how to do research and how to be critical about research, but most importantly, she taught me how to do research in a way that advances social justice. So Catherine had a long involvement with injured workers since she became a lawyer in 1978. And over the years, she worked tirelessly with various unions and community and other organizations to make life better for injured workers. And she didn't see her role as a neutral one. She strongly felt that research should be co-constructed with community members and should be used to help society. She was always available to respond to workers' concerns of injustices that were experienced on the ground and to share her knowledge with the injured worker movement. She fought for injured workers to be seen as people with value. And in an interview with injured worker activist Steve Mantis in January 2021, this is just a few months before she passed away, she said that her biggest wish was that injured workers would stop being treated as criminals. She was a deeply empathetic person and used her position to speak up about social justice issues. And despite being a lawyer, she did so using language everyone could understand. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't think we'd each get so emotional. So Stephanie has really described Catherine incredibly well. She's been lauded for her intellect and her contributions to occupational health and safety law and practice internationally. It has inspired a whole new generation of researchers and to try to be that type of researcher and academic and working closely with community and benefiting from that. I remember the first time I ever saw Catherine, it was in the 1990s. I was a doctoral student, and it was this conference in Toronto, and there was something wrong with the technology. There was quite a big glitch. And there she was, just like cool as a cat, you know, just sort of managing everything so well. And I thought, oh, I really like the way she's doing that. And then when I was doing my postdoc, I thought, I wonder if I ask her to work with me, if she'd accept, you know? And I couldn't believe it when she said yes. And that led to us working on several projects together. And then finally this one. And, you know, she shows up in my CV 66 times. Like, we did a lot together. We ended up having a wonderful, wonderful relationship. She was a mentor to me, sometimes like a sister, traveling together and doing some lovely things. I think Catherine would really love this conference that we're having now. So feels really good to have this. And I think Stephanie said a lot about Catherine, so I don't need to repeat it. So I'll just pass it back to you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Ellen. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about today's agenda. We have lots of exciting things. So this morning, we're going to hear in a moment from our first keynote speaker, whom Ellen is going to introduce shortly. So the keynote presentation is going to end around 10. We'll then have a 20-minute break where coffee and tea will be available just outside. Before lunch, we're going to have our first concurrent sessions of the day on each of immigrant and international perspectives on work and health, mental health and return to work, and workers' compensation financial incentives to employers. So I just want to note that the mental health and return to work session will be in French, and that no simultaneous translation will be available for that session, because simultaneous translation is only available for the events taking place in this room, so the keynotes, panel sessions, and other events that are taking place in this room. So lunch is at noon. Please join us for lunch. We're going to have a lunch buffet that's going to be served right outside of this room. I just want to note a couple of schedule changes to the program. So there is a skit, actually 3 skits prepared by SARO, the South Asian Women's Rights Organization, that was set to be presented during lunch today, but that's actually going to be performed tomorrow between 11:40 and 12:10. So this is in place of the keynote presentation by Eva Ottawa, who's unfortunately not able to attend. So the SARO skits will then be tomorrow. And as Ellen mentioned, I just wanted to reiterate that tomorrow's session at 10:20 on migrant workers will be held at the encampment. So this afternoon, after lunch, we also have an exciting program, 2 presentation session blocks. Just want to point out that at 3:50, we're going to have an end-of-day keynote address by Steve Mantis, a longtime injured worker advocate, currently with ONIWIG, which is the Ontario Network of Injured Workers Group. And the day is going to conclude with a panel to help us reflect on what we learned today. Our conference dinner is this evening at 6:30 at Heart and Crown Pub, which is at 67 Clarence Street. I think it's about a 10-minute or so walk from here. And registration for the dinner was to be done online by May 31st. So this is a great opportunity to really unwind and to connect with each other who are attending the conference. And we look forward to seeing many of you there. Tomorrow, we also have a great program with keynote presentations, oral presentation sessions, panels. I just want to bring attention to the lunchtime address tomorrow on building a community-university partnership to address system inequities. So community-university partnerships are crucial to ensure that the knowledge generated by research is reflective of the diverse experiences of community members and that it's useful to communities. So I look forward to that. And the full agenda is available in the booklet. I think you have. Okay, Ellen, I'll pass it over to you.
Perfect timing.
Okay. Oh, great.